Hello. I This is going to be a bit different. Welcome to the Jason Johnson YouTube channel. As you know the routine. For the first minute, I'm going to kind of break down what I'm talking about today. If you're seeing this on Instagram, if you're seeing this on TikTok, if you're seeing it on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Blue Sky, and then I'm going to have the full discussion on YouTube. And this is a bit difficult. Today, we're going to be talking about Los Angeles. I'm here in Los Angeles. And this is a really critical moment, sort of in American history. So I'm going to tell you first what's actually happening here. I'm here in Los Angeles. This is where I spend a tremendous amount of time. I can tell you what's actually going on downtown. I've seen things. I've talked to people. I've talked to government officials. Number two, I can tell you why this is actually happening, which unfortunately a lot of the mainstream press is doing punditry instead of telling you. And then three, what you can actually do. Because if we all don't do something about what's happening in Los Angeles right now, it's going to be your city tomorrow, if it's not your city already. And we're nearing an end game, folks, about how this democracy works. So I'll start with this. What is actually happening in Los Angeles? And I'm going to begin this by telling you all a little bit about my experiences in Ferguson, Missouri. Right? I'm going to compare Ferguson to what's happening right now. So I was in Ferguson in 2014, and I was there the week of the ruling about Officer Wilson killing Mike Brown. The ruling came out on a Wednesday. There were protests all throughout the week. They did the ruling on a Wednesday. The next day was Thanksgiving Thursday. So remember, I was there. I got tear gassed. I saw the protests. I saw the violence. I saw the ridiculous things that the cops were doing to people because I was one of those people. And I literally drove back to Atlanta the next morning, 6 or 7 hours from St. Louis. So the reason I'm mentioning that is because one of the things that was really obvious in Ferguson is, one, a lot of the violence was started by the police. The police were shooting tear gas, and tear gas canisters are very hot. So what happens when a tear gas canister hits a person? It burns them, it hits them. People scream, they fight back. What happens when a tear gas canister ends up in a garbage pile or something else like that? It sets garbage on fire. So tear gas canisters and rubber bullets actually hurt people. They're very, very violent ways to respond to folks. But here was the other thing, and the biggest takeaway from Ferguson, it applies here to Los Angeles. Ferguson, Missouri, the majority of the protests were in like a 2-block area. And you could walk 3 blocks down the street to the parking lot at Schnucks and Kroger, and you wouldn't know anything. There's still people in there shopping. It's actually where a lot of the police and media people were set up. And so I say that to say that a lot of journalists, including some people who are still on the air now, who were in Ferguson, they were dedicated to making Ferguson, Missouri look like no church in a while. And it wasn't. And that's Los Angeles right now. That's Los Angeles. This is a city of 4 million people in LA proper. I'm not talking about the additional people in the county. We get to 13, 14 million people. It is Pride Month. It is the BET Awards are happening tonight. And the BET experience, the vast majority, 98% of the people in this city are not directly being affected by any of these protests or the police actions. Now, I want to make that clear. It's not because the police actions and the ICE actions and the sheriff's actions and the cops' actions and the federal marshals and everything. It's not like those actions aren't bad. But what I'm telling you is the media depiction is going to be that the city is in absolute chaos and being destroyed. And it's not. It is not. There's some video that I'm actually going to be showing later on. I'm probably going to just post it directly to my YouTube, post it directly to my Instagram. Me and a group of friends, we went to see John Wick Ballerina on Sunday night. Not a very good movie. We went to see John Wick Ballerina at the Alamo Theater, which is in downtown Los Angeles. We come out of the movie and drove directly into the protesters, right? Not directly, although I saw someone driving directly into them, clearly trying to have like a Heather Heyer moment of harming people. And people were peacefully walking. That's it. They were peacefully walking down the street. And to make sure the cops didn't run into them, people were sort of standing there with their bikes. That's it. Nobody throwing anything. Nobody screaming anything. It's people protesting in their mass and protesting against what's actually being done. So it is absolutely clear. It is clear, taken from somebody who is in Los Angeles. I don't care how many people you see sitting on panels, okay? I'll be on one later on this week, but I don't care how many people you see sitting on panels pontificating about what's happening. I can tell you, as somebody who is actually here on the ground, do not trust anyone talking about what is happening in Los Angeles if they're not talking to an actual reporter on the ground. because it's very easy to look at these images and think that there's a lot of crazy stuff happening here that is not happening. The vast majority of the city is functioning as usual. You would not have known if you were not paying attention to the news. The only thing you would have noticed on Friday or Saturday or Sunday is that traffic was kind of heavy on the 101 heading downtown. And if you don't use the highway, and most people try not to use the 101, it was no issue. So that's the first thing. The first thing is what is actually happening in Los Angeles is not chaos. It's not destruction or explosions or anything else like that. It's none of those things. Okay? It's not. The second thing is this, and this is extremely important. Why is all of this happening? I don't do hyperbole, but this is an invasion. And it's not an invasion of undocumented or illegal people. It is an invasion by an authoritarian regime on a state that is deemed to not be supportive. If they were talking, if the BBC, if we talked about what Donald Trump is doing in California right now, the way we talk about Brazil or Syria or Iran, the story would be the authoritarian president who came to power by stoking racial tensions has attempted to move the army in to suppress protests against his policies in a state that did not support his rise to power. That's what's happening right now. There is no reason for ICE to be kidnapping people from their homes, and these are kidnappings. Okay? And I want to be clear about this when I say kidnappings and put this in proper context. Joe Biden was actually deporting more people from America than Donald Trump is now. If you look at the first couple months of Joe Biden being in office, he was kicking people out all the time. And you can have your arguments as to whether or not how you think undocumented people should be treated, DACA, blah, blah, blah. Joe Biden was actually deporting more people. But here's what Joe Biden was doing that's slightly different. Okay? Joe Biden was taking people or removing people from the country or telling them to leave or something else like that, primarily if your status had expired or was unclear or something else like that, and people were still usually being given the time or opportunity to process or appeal. What has happened under Donald Trump is he's basically juking the stats, right? And if you remember that juking the stats from like The Wire, where they would make it seem like there's more crime than it is so they can get overtime, that's what Donald Trump is doing right now. What do I mean by juking the stats? Well, basically what he's done is we can't find enough undocumented people for me to do this authoritarian grab that I want to grab. So what we're doing is, what his administration doing is they're going to people who already have a status, right? People who already have a legal status, and they're just revoking their status. They're revoking the status of people who thought they were here safely. That is completely different than telling somebody, hey, you have overstayed your visa, you gotta go or be deported. No, they're going to people who thought their statuses were set and clear. They're revoking them and then going and grabbing them. This is kidnapping. It is kidnapping. These people are not being given the opportunity to appeal. They're not being given the opportunity to call anyone. Right here in Los Angeles, you've had Maxine Waters, you've had several members of Congress attempt to go to ICE facilities, and they're not being allowed in. And people are being snatched from their homes, snatched from their jobs, snatched from locations, and taken to who knows where, without being able to talk to a lawyer, without being able to talk to a representative, without being able to talk to their family. That is kidnapping. Period. This is not law enforcement. And I need people to understand that that's what's at stake here. If the United States government, under this authoritarian regime, and stop pretending it's not, I swear if I see another person on air pretend that this has authoritarian tendencies, what do we call it? It's kind of like, that's a racial act. No, it's racist, right? These are not authoritarian tendencies. This is what authoritarians do. The president of the United States is threatening the governor of California, threatening to throw him in jail. Why? Because the governor of California is saying, you shouldn't be sending federal troops in here. You shouldn't be activating the National Guard. There's no reason to send Marines. The city is not out of control. The city is not in chaos. And I want to add this because it's very important for people to understand. Those pictures that you saw, the No Church in the Wild videos, like I was talking about with Ferguson, where you have cars being burned. Yes, there are burned vehicles. These are Waymo machines, right? Driverless cars, which are actually very common here in California. Is that a good thing? No. People don't like seeing property destroyed. Totally understand that, right? But when I tell you, it's not like, trust me, I've seen Ferguson. You know, there were bigger protests during George Floyd in 2020, during the pandemic. Okay? This regime, because it's not a functioning presidency, this regime is doing this for the opportunity to basically try to invade and do a military takeover of a blue or seen as opposition city. And no matter what happens in Los Angeles, they're going to try the same thing in Detroit. They're going to try the same thing in New York. They're going to try the same thing in Philadelphia. They're going to go to all the places that they think would be strongholds of resistance to their authoritarian push. That's all this is about. There are more than enough cops in Los Angeles to handle undocumented people. There are more than enough resources between the Sheriff's Department and the National Guard to handle anything in this state. This is a power grab. It is an invasion by the President of the United States to an opposing region of the country. Any other description that doesn't say that is lying to you. They are lying to you, and you need to understand that. And why would anyone lie who's in the press? Because they're afraid of saying what this is. Because we're old enough to remember the 2000 presidential election, where so many people who we were supposed to trust were afraid to say, hey, it looks like George W. Bush may have cheated. It looks like there were some questionable things with how the ballots were counted. And nobody wanted to say that at the time because they were afraid that if you expose the cracks in the system, then all of America would fall apart, right? It's the erosion of trust in our media. And that is an issue. And you know, I'm sorry, I say this a lot. I see it in a lot of writing. I see it in a lot of analysis one way or another. It's not well done. It's not well done. And it's not everybody. Trust me, I point out plenty of people who I think are actually doing an excellent job. But I think all too many people who are responsible for sharing this information with you are not telling you the direct truth. Now, here's the third thing and probably the most important thing. So first off, I started with what's actually happening. Like I said, Los Angeles is in much better shape than anybody is admitting or acknowledging it is. Number two, this is an invasion by this administration. This will just be step one. They're going to try and do this over and over and over again, and they're going to try and do it in other cities. And again, if they were actually interested in solving the problem, they'd be going to places with huge agribusiness, like Iowa and Nebraska and stuff like that. But they're not going to go to red states because it's all about sort of invading and threatening blue states and places that are perceived as not being supportive of the Trump authoritarian regime. The third part is this. What can you do? What can you do? There's a reason I'm wearing this shirt. This is Andres Bonifacio. You should look him up. You should look him up. I'll just say that. It's important. He's a revolutionary. What every single person watching this video needs to do, and every single person who's sending things on Instagram and TikTok about what's happening out here, every single person needs to make a dedicated effort as soon as you're done with this video. Share it with somebody. Point it out to somebody what's actually happening, and then call your member of Congress. Call them and say, what are you doing about this? And then number two, call your state rep and say, what are you doing about this? How will you prepare? Because it's coming to you. Don't think this is going to stop in California. They're going to come to Florida. They're going to come to North Carolina. They're going to come to Georgia. And not every state, and boy, I have plenty of criticisms of Gavin Newsom, but not every state is going to have a governor like Gavin Newsom who's basically like, yo, come get me. You know, come get me, Playboy. That's pretty much what Gavin Newsom's saying right now. I got plenty of problems with him, but at least he is rhetorically right now standing up to what this regime is attempting to do. But that may not be the case if this happens in Ohio. It may not be the case if this happens in Pennsylvania. That may not be the case if this happens in Virginia. So you need to call your state reps, your state governors, and everything else like that. That's the first thing you need to do. Number two, you need to make sure that every single person in your family has documentation of who and what they are. Period. I don't care what color you are. You need to have a picture on your phone of your passport. You need to have a picture on your phone of your driver's license, because I know no one leaves their houses without their phones anymore. You can leave your house and forget your ID. You can leave your house and forget your passport. You're not going to forget your phone. So make sure you have pictures of all of your relevant citizenship ID, you and your children on phones, your grandparents, brothers, sisters, everything. It doesn't matter if you think, hey, I'm an American citizen. They arrested the president of the SEIU union for supposedly being involved in protests. They've grabbed people who are American citizens. You think the fact that you were born here is going to keep you safe now? It won't. So maybe your documentation may slow things long enough that you were able to get home. That's how dire this situation is right now. I wish I could say something else. I wish I could say that somebody is coming to save us, but that's not going to happen. Now, I'm going to talk more about what we need to do in the future, but as of right now, just remember three things. Your city is next. Your best bet is to call your elected officials. Your best bet is to have all the documentation you can, and don't fall for anything or anybody who tells you that this is anything less than authoritarian power grab from people who do not want to have a functional democracy under this poor excuse for a presidency. That's 3 things tonight. See you, everybody.